Welcome back to part 8 of our live training session here with our K24 swapped Civic Si. This training module, we're going to dig into setting up our flex fuel control and then doing some pulls on our dyno to make sure that that flex fuel control is working properly and able to compensate for whatever ethanol blend we have in our fuel system. We have a lot of things to talk about. Let's jump in so we can check this out.
Welcome back to our live training session here with our K24 swapped Civic Si. This training module, we're going to jump right into taking a look at how to do a flex fuel based tune with our Emtron system. And we've already fitted our fuel system with a flex fuel sensor. In fact, that flex fuel sensor has been fitted onto the feed line. This is a returnless fuel system. We have that flex fuel sensor mounted into the engine bay. Now we've configured and set up our flex fuel. Let's go take a look at that real quick so we can kind of get an idea of where we're at and heading into this, this tutorial looking at this flex fuel based tuning. And we'll talk about all the different various aspects within a flex fuel based tune. We're going to do some pulls on the dyno here to see if we can extract any more power out of our engine using a little bit higher ethanol content. Now, when we were tuning the engine, it was about 15% ethanol content, had a little bit more ethanol in the fuel than I'd like to see to be able to do the petrol-based tune, but that's fine. Right now, we're at about a 48 to 50% ethanol blend. Now, I did drain the petrol fuel out of the fuel system, and I put in about 8 gallons of ethanol from the local fuel pump. There is a winter blend still that I have from all the cans that I filled up. So that winter blend is around a 50-60% blend of ethanol to petrol fuel. And I had some residual petrol fuel in the tank. So with the cross mixing, I got that blend up to about 48%. But that's okay. We're still going to be able to see the effect of working with our ethanol fuel. So let's jump in and talk about a few things. So the first thing is let's talk about the configuration of our flex fuel sensor. So if we jump in here to our configuration window, and we move over here to our channels, input setup. If we go here under our vehicle, we're gonna find that we have our ethanol sensor. Now I've set this up on digital input 2. If we double click here, we can see some of the basic configuration details. We have it set on a Hall input. We have it set that the activation is a falling edge, and then the pull up here is set to on. And it allows that signal to come in and be processed. Now, the flex fuel sensor is sending out a digital frequency-based signal. It's going to be 50 hertz is equivalent to 0% ethanol, and then 150 hertz is equivalent of 100% ethanol. And anywhere between that in terms of the frequency reading from the sensor signal output, we can determine what that ethanol content is going to be. Now, I also have, and this is really key here, under the arming thresholds, we have a table set up as the option, and under the edit table, all the values need to be 2 in order for that sensor to work. That is a detail that you definitely don't want to go ahead and forget about, or the sensor won't work properly. If we click OK here, what we can do is jump into F3, and if we jump here into our Fuel 2 tab, we can see the status of what that ethanol concentration or ethanol content is reading from our sensor. We can see right here the ethanol content is showing 48%. Now the ethanol temperature, the fuel temperature from the same circuit, is giving us an output here of about 35 Celsius. We can see the ethanol status is on and the ethanol fault table is off. So everything is functioning properly here. And again, I drained out the petrol fuel that we had in before. I was checking on what the ethanol content was reading during the tuning process, and it was about 15 to 16%. Now, let me talk about how I drained the fuel out of my fuel system. This is also pretty straightforward. A little trick to be able to make this easier, getting the ethanol to pump out of your fuel tank. If you're like a newer vehicle like this vehicle, it does not have a drain on the tank. So in order to get that fuel out, you have to go in and jump the fuel pump. Now you could jump the relay to the fuel pump to turn on the fuel pump, or we can just do that virtually. It makes it much easier. So if I click close here, we jump into functions, into the output setup. I went in here to the vehicle functions under the fuel pump, and I just simply went to the output and clicked invert it. When I click OK here, the fuel pump's actually on right now. So it inverts the fuel pump. Normally the state would be key on engine, off would be fuel pump off. In this case, it's now making that fuel pump run constantly. We can go here to invert, turn that off when we want the fuel pump to turn off. Now, I connected, this particular vehicle has from the hard line on the firewall a number 6 AN line. That's running into the ethanol sensor, and then that's running into the fuel rail. I simply took off that feed line. I connected a number 6 with a male-to-male AN fitting, and I just ran that into some cans that I had here in the shop as I was using that fuel pump jump feature. So that's pretty simple, and then I filled it up with ethanol. So that's where we're at in terms of some of our setup here. So we know we have our ethanol sensor configured and set up. We know that we have our fuel drained out. We know how to do that with our fuel pump. Let's talk about how this ethanol in the flex fuel control works and how it establishes our fueling to our engine. Now we know on pump gas, petrol fuel, we've dialed in our airflow models. So we dialed in our VE table 1, VE table 2. We know our fueling is on point, everything looks good there. But how do we add the additional fueling in when we're dealing with our ethanol-based tuning? It's actually really simple. And under our configuration setup here, if we go to fuel, and we go in here.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.